Welcome. Today we're going to focus on yield potential, on plant populations, on the various aspects that determine how much yield your rice gets. So we're beginning today in a hole, in a blank space in our rice crop. You can see here where there should be rice, there's no rice. I think there's two reasons for it. Firstly, when we were transplanting, I suspect this area only received less than the number of seedlings it should have, if any at all. We can see, not see really, but behind us a little here we can see some seedlings that are very delayed. I'm not quite sure why they're delayed so much, but it's an indicator that in the transplanting process something didn't quite go right. But what's made it worse is rats. You can see in front of us leaves that have been removed, chopped off, tillers that have been removed by rats. So where we've had a space, the rice around it has attempted to compensate, has attempted to grow bigger, and it seems to have failed. And I think the reason it's failed is the rats have taken advantage of this open area and targeted this area for their own food purposes, their own food consumption, and hence damage the yield potential. So the rice, and it's something we're going to, a central theme today, that the rice is what we call a very plastic plant, a very elastic plant between plant number, tiller number and panicle size. It's got quite an ability to adapt and to compensate. But here's a location where it hasn't worked. The open space is still an open space, and the plants around us are not particularly convincing. In this area there's definitely quite a large damage to the yield of the crop, and it will reduce the average yield of the whole field, no doubt. It's locations like this that Akim got so upset about 2 weeks ago when he was top dressing. They're visually quite ugly, but importantly in terms of yield potential they're very, very damaging. Here we have one plant, it might have been 2 or 3 plants in fact. Each plant has tillers, and each tiller has a panicle of a certain size, a certain number of grains sitting on the top of it. So that's what we call the yield components. So I'd like Benoit, you to consider how rice can adapt to different situations, different plant populations, different radiation, different aspects of the plant environment, and how it compensates for that to get the yield it wants.
Yes, thank you Ray for inviting me. I will try to answer this question. As you mentioned, yes, rice or wheat, this type of cereals, have a very good ability to tiller, so it makes the things very different. Once you have missed your planting with maize, it's nearly fade. It's not the case with the other crop until certain limit. So yes, due to this very large number of tillers I can produce, and during a relatively long time, until more or less the time they start to elongate. So for rice here, during 2 months, which is a long period, they can produce a lot of what we name tillers, these stems, and until covering a much larger space than what they are covering at the beginning. So yes, they give them a good ability to recover if the plant density at the beginning is not sufficient, if we miss more or less
a little at the moment. We're now beginning grain fill. So if we pick a grain and squeeze it, it's at what's called the milky stage. The photosynthate, the starch, the protein, etc. is starting to be formed inside the grain. Flowering has finished. Here, flowering is still underway for the inbred behind me. It's about a week afterwards, but grain fill has definitely begun, and that's why you can see the odd panicle is now turned downwards. It's getting a little heavy and starting to show that it is bearing grain. Otherwise, rats aside, it's quite a good news story. There's few weeds, it's setting its panicles well. There doesn't seem to be any insects issues, any other pathogen issues at the moment. Watch this space. But it looks good for a reasonable yield potential, notwithstanding our rat problem over there. Next we'll be choosing when to drain the field. As we did last time, we agonised for some time over exactly when to drain. We got it basically right, notwithstanding we had a big lodging problem last year, so we're going to be thinking about that. How can we do anything to counteract the lodging problem? But the next decision will be when to drain the field, and then harvest will be in about a month, I would say, from now.